9 iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf fans. You have stumbled upon the Preferred Lines podcast, written, produced, hosted by yours truly, Joe Idoni. You can find me at Tour Picks on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer. And I'm excited to bring to you a live show tonight streaming on YouTube. The audio podcast, will be available on Spotify and Apple Pods and anywhere you get your podcasts here shortly. But we're going to break down the Genesis Invitational. We have the return of the greatest of all time is injecting himself into this signature event series, which I'm excited to talk about. We'll wrap up things from the Waste Management. Football season's over. It's all eyes on golf, and hopefully the PGA Tour can capitalize this week on a lot of eyeballs that will be coming to the game, and we get through delay season, and everything will be off to a great start. I got to mention that this podcast is brought to you in part by the great folks over at Rotoballer. I have joined their team this season. We've got a fantastic offer. The promo code that I can give you is LINES. LINES is going to get you, I believe, 15% off your membership. It comes down to like $7 a week. You will have access to all of my content there, the Launching Long Shots video, course preview, breakdown, top tens, the market mover segment, which I've really, really enjoyed doing that I hope you guys like as well, is up there also. And you get access to all the other guys, Spencer, Byron, two of the most in the weeds stat guys that I know in terms of building models and breaking down numbers and analytics. Make sure to go check out the team over there. Promo code LINES. Thank you to Rotoballer. Getting across the bottom right now for supporting this podcast. As always, if you enjoy the show, make sure to like and subscribe to the Preferred Lines YouTube channel. It is my goal very soon to hopefully get this YouTube channel up over the plateau that I've been reaching for of 1,000 subscribers. I know that we can do it. Help me get there. I would genuinely appreciate it. And without further ado, to come on and we'll wrap things up from last week. We'll get to the odds boards. We'll make some picks. We'll talk the course. Welcoming back into Preferred Lines for his third or fourth time on the show, my good friend and dear favorite person in golf content to take in some of their incredible stuff. Welcome back, Andy Lack. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. That was such a wonderful intro. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you on what I believe to be my favorite non-major of the season. Where are you at in your power rankings? Like right off the top, not to put you on the spot, but if you had to give me your favorite non-major PGA Tour event of the season, where would you go?
You know, this is absolutely up there. I would say my favorite is Memorial, and mostly because I have personal ties to it. It was the first tournament I ever attended. It was like a 2.5-hour drive from where I grew up. I have incredible memories there of watching Tiger and Phil and the great sort of tee it up. And I love how it kind of comes in the midsummer right between major seasons. But without a doubt, I mean, you know every hole before we get there, and so do I, and so do so many viewers of Riviera, and there's nothing overly dramatic, I would say. Like, there's no hazards or anything crazy or tricks and, things that are overly done at Riviera, but we know all the shots. We've seen a fantastic group of winners, and we usually see the cream rise to the top.
Yeah, I would call it a death by 1,000 paper cuts course, right? And players have talked about this in the past. Like, there's nothing overly tricky or sneaky about Riviera, right? There are a lot of dog legs and things of that nature, but as you mentioned, there's no water hazards on the entire golf course. And that is kind of a staple of George Thomas's architecture, right? Like what he was so good at was challenging players with angles. Now, something we could probably get into is how a lot of those angles have been compromised by how far the golf ball travels now in driver face technology. But for the most part, like, Riviera still delivers every single year. It's been trending towards getting easier the last couple of years. And I'm sure we can talk about that if you want as well. But for the most part, whether it's 17 under, 9 under, 13 under, 18 under, it's a pretty darn good course for separating like the best players from the worst players, which, I've been saying is something I hope starts changing a little bit more on the PGA Tour for now 6 weeks in and running out of money to bet on this crazy sport of ours.
Dude, I know. I talked to you, what was it, 4 weeks ago at the Amex when I came on your show, and we're like, this has got to end. It hasn't
Right.
ended. I was going to ask you this question a little further into the show, but since you started down the sort of George Thomas and the architectural link, purely as an opinion here, as someone who appreciates the nuances of and deeply in tune with golf course architecture, does it bother you, Andy, when players hit up the wrong fairway, like on 15, Victor Hovland is doing, and kind of avoiding one of the most hazardous bunkers on the PGA Tour and not playing the course as intended by the design? Not to say if it's right or wrong, but does it sort of bother you as someone who is really into that kind of stuff?
Yes, but I don't blame the players for taking advantage of optimal strategy. I think that is on the PGA Tour officials and tournament organizers who set up a golf course like Riviera to create internal OB to prevent players from doing that if they don't want players to do that. Now, you can look at it the other way and say, maybe it's entertaining for fans to watch Victor Hovland hit up another fairway. And if you want to keep that, then I understand that as well. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that I've had to navigate is understanding that, at the end of the day, this is an entertainment product. We don't go to the golf courses that I would want to go to from an architectural standpoint, and we never are going to go to those golf courses. So this is really about creating like the golf courses that I would want to play, that would be at my bucket list in terms of what I would want to play, versus the golf courses that I think produce the best professional golf are wildly different to begin with anyway, right? So, I think a golf course like Riviera, are we starting to lose it a little bit in real time? I talked about this on my Sunday podcast because of how far the golf ball travels. Absolutely. If you want like example A of the distance problem manifesting in real time, just look at I can give you a million numbers of how Riviera plays differently than it did in 1985 or even 2005. But at the end of the day, like you can't get mad at the players for doing this. Like their job is to identify optimal strategy.
Right. Speaking of optimal strategies, I guess let's go back to sort of the waste management a little bit. Many a players annoyed with the fans and the situation they believe has gotten a little bit out of control there. Is it something so unique that you feel like the players should just need to sort of drop the pretentiousness and embrace it, or has it crossed the line?
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. I've thought about this a decent amount over the last couple of days. And I think the PGA Tour has a real legitimate identity problem. And I think that they need to tread very, very carefully and very, very lightly in terms of losing some of the tournaments that do have a distinct identity. Now, that is not to say that some of the unruly drunken behavior by the fans didn't probably cross the line. I'm sure it did. Like at the end of the day, this is these guys' jobs out there. They're playing for millions of dollars. Every single golf shot for like a professional golfer has the ability to completely drastically change their career. You look about what Charlie Hoffman's life would look like over the next 2 to 3 years if he won this tournament versus even just finishing second. But this is kind of a non-answer, but to me, I would stray closer to the line of you need to preserve Phoenix. And I don't quite have the best answer of how you toe the line of getting the fans to be more respectful while still making it the highest attended tournament on tour. This is a massive moneymaker for the PGA Tour, Joe. Like Phoenix is the best attended tournament on tour. They just built a whole DraftKings new sports books there. Like the opportunities for the PGA Tour with that golf course and with that tournament from a financial standpoint is pretty endless compared to other PGA Tour events. So I think they're in a tricky spot where, they have to keep the players happy. But if they start trying to change the identity of that tournament, one of the only tournaments that has an identity on the PGA Tour, I think they're walking kind of a slippery slope. What do you think?
Yeah, so some of the clips that came out of Horschel and ZJ, they bothered me a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. The sense
Yeah.
of entitlement that I felt there and elitism, I think is wrong. I think that you have one of the most fun fan environments of the year, and how the tour covered it with basically showing us one singular 120-yard golf hole on Saturday is another thing, but it's part of the event. And the players, the purses have increased drastically, and they want to find something to complain about. Just go play golf, to me. And it's players are, I understand they're playing for a ton of money, and one shot could be the difference between $500,000 for them. But you know what? One free throw for LeBron James can be the difference in making and losing a game. And players and people are screaming the most vile, ridiculous things during a football game and a basketball thing at these guys. And I realize it's a common occurrence and something that they're used to, but complaining about it and yelling back at the fans during the event, I think, is the wrong way to go about it, and makes those guys look bad and makes the rest of the tour look bad in conjunction with them, because no one's really on the other side outwardly sticking up for them, except for like Smiley and Kevin Kisner in the booth.
I think that's a good point. And what I would say seems like the most natural solution is, and previously, if you had asked me this question before the tournament started, I would have told you, I don't understand why this isn't a signature event, right? Because why not capitalize on one of the most fun golf courses that you have, and bring all of the best players to it? You'd probably even sell more tickets than you would in the past. After watching Phoenix and watching three of the best 5 players that would have been in the field withdraw on Monday, and Hovland, Xander, and Finau, I actually think this is like a perfect situation to be like, hey, we know this tournament is different. We're going to embrace it. It seems like the fans are going to show up and have a great time, whether the best players in the world are there or not. So why don't we just leave this a non-signature event? And if you don't want to play it because you don't like the atmosphere, then nobody's holding a gun to your head and making you play it.
Yeah, they broke the tournament record, I believe, on
Yeah.
Saturday, and they were like storming the gates, and they had to stop letting people in and shut
With
down alcohol
terrible
stuff
weather and their worst field in a couple of
and
years.
delays, and no one knew who was starting. People just show up. It's not like they showed up at 9 a.m. on Saturday because they knew Spieth teed off at 9:08 and they were there to follow that group.
Right.
90% of the people there had no idea who was playing, where they were at on the course. They were just there to have a good time. And I think that in spots, absolutely, it's something that's good for the game and should be embraced by the players. And another thing that, I thought a lot about this, Annie, and another thing that it's starting to bother me a little bit about the players, and I wonder your take on it, because I feel like you may have a different opinion than me on this, but I was very much in for this offseason when the players took the majority votes on the tour, and they added more players to this policy board, and Cantlay and Spieth and these guys, where now they have the majority. So anything that needs passed through the tour has to be passed by the players. They have the most votes. But a lot of them have come out in the last week and been critical of the live guys coming back to their tour, right? And they've made things like, I don't think it should necessarily be a direct path. They don't want them to just unpenalize, which I understand. This is the thing, is I understand their opinion and their reasoning behind it. But in what sport should the players be in charge of who they get to play against? Right? If they qualify in the tour, and what's best for these sponsors who are putting up $20 million, and what's best for the company that just invested $12 billion into their league, is to find a way to bring these guys back to the PGA Tour, I think. And if the players don't want it, I don't think that it should be up to them. Do you agree with me there, or should the players have a big say in who gets to play on their tour?
I do agree with you. I think it's a little complicated and nuanced once you start getting into the players that have directly sued the PGA Tour. But for the most part, I think a lot of this is an ego problem, Joe. Okay. And I
Okay.
think there's going to be a lot of guys on the PGA Tour that are going to look at a lot of the live players and say, God, you really had your cake and ate it too, right? Like you got this giant bag of money to basically play on this breakaway tour for a couple of years. You didn't really have to grind the way that we maybe did. You were playing for much bigger purses. And now we are going to join back together under some sort of unified tour. And we are the ones that didn't get any of that money and had to do your guys's, do the PGA Tour's bidding, which kind of stabbed us in the back at the end of the day, no matter what. And I think a lot of those PGA Tour guys have a right to be upset, but I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, they also are going to have to put their egos aside and ultimately do what's best for the game at the end of the day. And obviously, I think I've been pretty vocally critical about the logistical challenges of a global tour that I think a lot of people are not taking into consideration. Now, with that being said, you know, getting these guys back together for more than 4 weeks a year is essential. I don't care whether they're playing in Saudi Arabia or at Crooked Cat or at TPC Sawgrass, but as fans, this concept that we have to settle for
Yeah.
4 weeks a year um, is wild in sports. Like if you think about it, it truly is wild. So I really do think that a lot of the PGA Tour guys have to say to themselves, like, you know what, we didn't take the live money, we stayed on the PGA Tour. This is the decision that we made. We probably did okay financially. A lot of those PGA Tour guys had an easier path to make money on the PGA Tour because a
Yes.
lot of the talent left from the PGA Tour. And, honestly, Joe, if you gave some of the live guys truth serum, I'm not sold that every single player that went to live was totally happy with their decision either. Like this goes a little bit farther than money for guys too. Like live players have talked about, I don't know how open this is. I've heard from a couple people, but like live players have talked about how, since they've gone to live, like their kids aren't getting as invited to as many birthday parties because like people are, abusing them online about being bidders for the Saudis. So like
Mm.
there's consequences to decisions in both realms, right? And at the end of the day, it would be nice to feel like the fans had a chance at winning, once in like
Yeah.
the history of golf over the past 3 years.
And you made some great points there. And I take a lot of try to take as much understanding as I can there. It's tough because I do think that the PGA Tour players, while they didn't take the money, they sort of indirectly had major benefits from what has transpired with Liv. The
Totally.
purses went 2.5x for a guy like, I don't know, for a guy like my boy Denny McCarthy to not have to play like Rom and Brooks and Bryson and all of
Yeah.
these guys, and all of a sudden he's a top 15 player in the field instead of the 32nd player. He's indirectly benefiting. The purse is double. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of people that this is still a very hot button, politically charged topic with, that they are also seeing these guys as the good guys. I was kind of honestly kidding. I was watching Live. I really have enjoyed the first 2 weeks, if I'm being honest with the broadcast. And I was like kidding and like took a little snippet of like Rom, who was getting like angry at some fans. And it's gotten like 1 million views and like 1,000 retweets because people all want to talk about it. And the majority of them are either extremely negative or extremely positive. And no one just saw that I was sort of like kidding on the whole thing. And how ironic it was that while Phoenix was going on, there was music playing and like he's telling fans to silence their phone while it sounds like Club 54, like right off the side of the tee box. It's just weird. And I would like to find a way for them all to come back together. And I think that if live players are able to, if there's able to be a qualification system, if the sponsor who's hosting and paying for the tournament wants to issue, if the Cognizant Classic in 2 weeks wants to issue a sponsor's invite to Brooks Koepka, who always attended this event, who doesn't have a live tournament going on, who lives 10 miles down the road and grew up here, I think that he should be able to play.
Agreed. I think you probably feel similarly to this, but I think and this is why I have just stopped engaging in the discourse in general, as it pertains to live PGA Tour. And it took me a while to get there, right? Like I argued with people. I wish I had that time back. I wish I could take it back, but I certainly argued with people about this in the past. And I think a lot of golf fans, people that just really are in the weeds like you and I, that really care about this, have kind of just reached a point where, listen, the people that like live are just, I've talked about this on my podcast before. It's a lot like politics. Like there's not going to be a lot of people changing teams at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who signs next with Liv, if they got Wyndham Clark or Tyrrell Hatton. Like the people that are out on Liv made their mind up about Liv a while ago. Okay. And a lot of them made their mind up about Liv, which had nothing to do about golf. Okay. They made their mind up about Liv for other reasons. And if they tried the golf, they tried it a long time ago. And that's where they're at. And a lot of the people that like ride for this league, they are so ride for Liv. They're already so pot committed to that, about it like being the best and better than the PGA Tour. Like they're all in already. So I think, if we get some sort of unification, I don't know what anyone on the internet is going to fight about anymore. I would much rather fight with people about how far the golf ball travels and driver face technology than Liv versus PGA Tour at this point. But yeah, I think we're both in the same boat where we're kind of tired of the discourse and hoping that something comes together for us in the next couple of years, at least.
I wanted to ask you something because I think you have one of the best analytical minds in golf content. So I noticed, and I heard your podcast. Congrats on sort of partnering with Ron and the rabbit hole thing that they've done. I think that they're bringing a new sort of generation and access and filters that nobody else has sort of in the stat game. But I wanted to ask you something that I've kind of been noticing, because since I started listening to golf content 10, 12 years ago when it was just Pat and Jeff, there's been this narrative that is so heavily pushed. And I think it's mostly right, but it's that putting is the most variable thing ever. And part of me is like, every time I hear it, Andy, I'm like, is it though? Like, is it the most variable thing ever? And I get back to this because last week I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is I said, look, Scotty Scheffler is not a good putter. He's had the 2 of his 3 best putting performances in his career at Phoenix. Does that mean he's going to just all of a sudden putt great here again? No way. No way does he putt 7 strokes above his baseline here. He kind of did. And I'm starting to think that putting may not be quite as random as we may think, and it may be predictive a little bit more than I think the mainstream narrative is being. And I was kind of like looking a little bit at the beginning tournaments of the season and just the people who have ranked top 15 in strokes gained putting in the first 6 tournaments of the year. And not all these guys have played all 6 events, but 19 different guys so far this season, most of them have played 4 tournaments, have been top 15 in putting more than once. That's way more than approach. That's way more than off the tee. So the same players are putting well across multiple tournaments. Good putters are putting really well. Denny McCarthy's, Stuart Singh, Griot, Ben Griffin, Taylor Montgomery. These guys have been in the top 15 of strokes gained putting 2 or 3 times. And I look at some great iron players. Now, Scotty's kind of the exception, but you look at a above average iron player like Justin Thomas or someone like Max Homa even. And it's like 1 week they're +3, 1 week they're -2, then they're +4, then they're -1. So do you think the narrative it may be that putting is not predictive whatsoever and is less predictive than other stats could be a little bit overblown, or am I just kind of too far in the weeds and overlooking this here?
You're not too far in the weeds. This is how much time do you have? I'll attempt to keep this brief. Um, okay, putting is predictive. Putting from 3 to 15 feet is predictive. What is not predictive is long putts. Okay, so that is, I think, the thing that people mistake a lot. But if you look at the R squared for putting from 3 to 15 feet, and the players that are consistently the best from 3 to 15 feet, that is very consistent. Okay, over 24 rounds, over 50 rounds, year to year. Generally, there's going to be cases where, somebody like Jason Day can be the best putter in the world for a year and then lose it. Same thing with Spieth, same thing with Ricky Fowler. Those are just 3 guys off the top of my head that went from being good putters to bad putters, but that happens with ball striking as well. Right?
That's
Like,
my point. Really. Yeah.
that happens with ball striking as well. The unpredictable, the reason why there is validity to the randomness in putting is that it is easier to gain strokes putting with a hold 50-footer. I don't need to get too deep into the nuances of strokes gain, but it's easier to gain strokes putting with a hold 50-footer than it is to gain strokes off the tee with a 330-yard drive down the middle of the fairway. So where putting can get sneaky is if a player happens to hold a lot of long putts in a round, that is going to largely skew their putting stats. But one of the things that I have been looking at for years, and I would encourage other people to look at, is the stickiness of putting inside 15 feet. So I agree with you. I think you just need to get a little bit more specific at what types of putting you're looking at.
Okay, well, let's get into Riviera a little bit because I know this has been one of the most difficult places to hole putts, inside of 10 feet every year. It's very tough. The greens are fast. They're POA. They are masterfully crafted, I think, by George Thomas, and they play tricks with sort of angles and pin locations that just make them very difficult because I think a lot of times on approach shots, what this course does such a great job of is maybe not encouraging, but making the simple shot on approach also a rather difficult putt. So if you really want to get aggressive with your approach, you're going to have to take on a lot of risk in order to get yourself a relatively flat uphill putt that you want. If you take the safe route, you may hit the green, but then you're left with a very difficult 25-foot putt that you could eventually 3-putt. What are your sort of, do you side with me there? Are there 1 or 2 things and sort of nuances of this course that maybe you're factoring in a little bit than someone who's reading a course preview out there from anywhere else?
I don't know what people are saying because I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off today, doing a bunch of content. But one thing that I don't think, I'm just going off like last year's content, if I remember correctly. Do people talk about Riviera as a bomber's paradise?
I think I've heard it a little bit. I kind of, and I don't know where you're at on it, but I kind of lean that way.
Yeah,
But I
me too,
think
by
there
the way.
are some people maybe will just look at fairways and regulation and see that less than 50% are hit. And they'll say, oh, this is a great course for someone like a Brian Harmon or a Colin Morikawa or someone who's going to hit 75, 80% of fairways because the rough is difficult. You can't get really any roll out of the rough. So if you can hit fairways, you'll have a big advantage. But when you look at what like these players have done with driver and even Neiman, who's like not the longest guy out there, but just hitting it so far. And the greens are big in size, but like I mentioned, they do a great job with angles. So they do not play 7,500 feet, particularly from 175 yards. Your landing area coming out of the rough is very small. So if you can come in with an 8-iron versus a 6-iron, it's a huge advantage, particularly if less than half the fairways are hit for all players.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Joe. Like I look at it last year and um every single one of the top 6 gained significantly to the field in distance, and 3 of the top 6,
Mhm.
including Rahm, Homa, and Zalatoris, lost fairly significantly in accuracy, hitting well below 50% of their fairways. You look at the prior year, 10 of the top 12 gained to the field in distance, only 5 of the top 12 gained in accuracy. Neiman won, losing significantly to the field in driving accuracy. Same with Adam Scott and Hovland, who both finished top 5. So, I think this is a golf course with a really low missed fairway penalty, right? Like it ranks at the absolute bottom on tour in terms of missed fairway penalty. There's no hazards or anything out there, and I think people get Kikuyu in their head and freak out. I mean, I play a lot of Kikuyu. I would rather play Kikuyu than Bermuda 7 days a week and twice on
Mhm.
Sunday. Um, so, to me, this is a golf course where unfortunately some of the angles and dog legs have been compromised by this concept of, okay, these fairways are narrow, firm, and canted anyway, and I can cut the corner with this dog leg. So would I rather try and hit this 25-yard wide fairway and have a 5-iron out of the fairway, or just try and cut the corner of the dog leg, be fine in the rough, and have a 9-iron out of the rough? And I think that's what's happened to Riviera a little bit over the years, statistically, at least in my opinion. So to answer your question, like I think an underrated way to get different at Riviera is maybe emphasize the importance of power off the tee. And then I still like I continue to think that putting from 3 to 15 feet and experience on Polo, like this was the same thing that helped me hit Wyndham Clark. Like I put Wyndham Clark before that putting crazy round at Pebble Beach, made everything from 3 to 15 feet. And look what happens when he rolls in a couple long ones. He wins the tournament, right? So I would say if you're looking to get different, power off the tee and putting from 3 to 15 feet are really important at Riviera.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Wyndham Clark here in a few minutes when we get to the odds boards. I feel like he is, for the second and third consecutive week, probably the most mispriced player on the odds board in terms of talent and win equity that he holds in a big time event like this. But what about, where do you stand on reps? Okay, so I was looking into this last week a lot, and it kind of bothered me a little bit about guys like Victor and Rory. It's golf is such a unique sport, and you're a former player who played at a very high level. It's so unique that there's nothing else really like it, where there's players like Tom Hoagie who have played 6 consecutive events. There's guys like Xander who really grinded early in the season, playing 4 or maybe it was even 5 consecutive weeks there, but got his game into form. They're getting tournament reps under their belt early in the season. And then they're playing guys kind of coming off the preseason, you know what I mean, who have played a quarter and now they're thrust into a big game, and they're playing against teams who are in week 5, right? Who are in week 6 of the regular season. Um, how important it is, like, so for someone like Victor, for instance, that has played 7 rounds all year, 7 rounds since the Tour Championship of Golf. He goes back and sees his coach and would rather sort of figure things out on the range. And this is probably player specific, but do you take into account when betting and looking at the odds board how much a guy has played, especially at this awkward point in early February, where there's some guys who we've seen a lot of and some we've seen very little?
Yes and no. Like you raise such an interesting point that I think about a lot, and because it's still sort of unquantifiable and different players are going to react differently to different scheduling spots. Um, I think it varies from player to player, but like I'll give you 2 quick examples. Eric Cole's played every single week this season. Okay.
Yeah.
He hasn't taken 1 week off. Um, I'm just gonna. I think I'm gonna wait. I just. He
Yeah.
looks. He looks like he's starting to lose some steam. His ball striking numbers are heading in the wrong direction. I get it. You're a 35-year-old dude that got hot. Like squeeze as much out of it as you can. But that after a certain point, the travel, the weather. I mean, you just played 2 shitty weather weeks in a row with
Yeah.
really difficult start times in different cities. Like take a week off and then we can talk. And Hovland, you have to trust players, I think, especially at the high level, to understand schedule optimization. Okay. And these guys work with schedule. I know people that do schedule optimization for PGA Tour pros. My friend who's on the podcast 15 times, Joseph Omania, works with pros on schedule optimization. Hovland's an interesting case because he didn't skip Phoenix because he didn't want to play Phoenix. He skipped Phoenix because he had some serious issues in his game, and he thought that he was way better suited at home with his coaches figuring it out than playing through it. But I think at the highest level, like, you got to trust. Rory's a good example of this. Rory has been going to Dubai instead of Hawaii for his entire career, and Rory always plays great in January. He always almost wins Dubai. He always plays well at Riviera. He always plays well in Florida, and then he's like ready to go for the Players. So, I at the highest level, I trust it. I trust whatever their schedule is. But then with Eric Cole, it's just like, dude, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. Well, signature event. They're all here this week. The best in the world. Let's look at the odds. Top of the board this week. Once again, world number one. Almost did it last week. Scotty Scheffler is plus 750. So 7.5 to 1 over at Bet365. Rory's second on the board at 10 to 1. Victor Hovland 14 to 1. Xander at 16 to 1. JT now, down to 18 to 1. Cantlay at 18. Morikawa at 20. Home at 20. Where's Ludwig? Ludwig's still at 20. Ludwig's at 22 now. Favorite guy on the top of the board, Mr. Lack?
Okay,
favorite
so
bet, I should say.
yeah,
Favorite bet.
I bet Justin Thomas at 22 to 1. Good. Okay, that makes me feel better because I think you can make an inspired case for a lot of these guys, Joe. I settled on Justin Thomas mainly because yes, I could give you a million reasons based on his course fit. He's obviously been great at Riviera. But I saw something at the Amex where I said, this guy is on a mission to win like before the Players. This guy is not easing into the Masters. This guy hasn't won a golf tournament since Southern Hills. Do I have that correctly? I can't think. I'm pretty sure he hasn't won a golf tournament since the 2022 PGA.
Correct.
Yeah. I think there is not a lot separating from a course fit standpoint, at least in my numbers. A lot of these guys at the top can give you a great case for Rory, great case for Scotty, great case for Victor, great case for Xander. But in terms of like who needs this, we can litigate whether if he gets paired with Tiger, that makes you feel better or worse. But this is just a JT week to me. And to be honest with you, I was a little surprised at 22 to 1 for him and 14 for Xander Hovland.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. Xander's playing great. I don't get Hovland's not playing great. Cantlay's there. I don't understand what's going on, but he's shooting out the first round lead, but he's like dealing with demons right now. I feel like Xander's playing the best of the three. So I still think he's always mispriced at 16 to 1. I took Justin Thomas as well. The ball striking is back. He's nearing leaderboards, which I'm happy to see. He is not like finishing second every week, which is going to plummet his betting price. And when he does get that win, which I agree with you is probably coming before they leave Florida, he's going to be down in the 16, 14 to 1 heading into majors this season. Playing fantastic. Should have won in 2019, 4-stroke lead heading into the final round, lost to JB Holmes, lost it, has talked very openly about how much he was hurt by that event. He obviously wants to take a title from Tiger Woods in a trophy presentation. So I think he sets up phenomenal this week. And the other one for me is I took a 20. It looks like there's 22s now out there at one book at least, but I took Ludwig. God, man, it's just special. His ability tee to green is maybe 2 years, like close to it's like Scotty, Rory, Ludwig right now for me is like
Yeah.
the number 3 guy, and his ability to drive it, and he's putted great on POA. That's the
Mhm.
difference. Is I don't think Rory necessarily loves POA. I think that Scotty has problems. I think it was great for him to get back on really fast lightning Bermuda mostly last week. I worry about his ability to hold putts. I think Ludwig was in a good position to potentially win at Pebble Beach a few weeks ago. Putted good at the Farmers. His win on the DP World Tour at the Omega, I think it was. I forget the name of it, but it was Poa Greens. Just love those two guys at the top. I sort of saw these, honed in on these two names right away. I thought about Sam Burns because I think he's playing amazing right now, and I had him last week, and it felt like I was texting our buddy Luke about it, and we were like, Burns is going to eagle one of these holes on the back 9 and get himself right into this. And sure enough, like he just comes through clutch with eagles and putts when you need him and striking the ball really well. But ended up on JT and Ludwig, and those are really my only 2 guys inside of 40-1 this week.
Yeah. I am pretty close on Ludwig. I know he's been a pretty popular bet this morning. I think the quick case against Ludwig is that we haven't seen a first-time winner here since 2005 and Adam Scott. There actually is nuance to Riviera. Like it is the type of course that if you've never played it before, you could be like, huh, this is interesting. I'm not really sure what I should do on this golf hole. Now, the counterpoint to that is, I mean, why isn't Ludwig 2005 Adam Scott? He could be 2012 Rory for all we know.
Yeah.
If you
Cam
think
Young, I think, finished second in
second,
his first
guys have
appearance.
come close. Guys with
And like
talent.
his
Yeah,
skill set is like Cam Young, Adam Scott-esque for sure.
totally, totally. And if you think Ludwig is that guy, then this is a phenomenal golf course for him.
Hmm.
Okay. Like I said this when he was winning the RSM Classic. Okay. I remember saying to a buddy, like, I don't think people realize how bad of a golf course that is for Ludwig. Like, just wait till you get to golf courses where they actually value what Ludwig does best. Like, just wait till we get to Riviera and Torrey Pines and Bay Hill. Okay. And if you think Ludwig is that guy, then this is the spot that is going to accentuate everything that he does best. And I mean, this could be the coming out party, right? Like this could be the enunciation of like, okay, this is like the 4th best player in the world.
The weird thing about golf to me, and I didn't play growing up, but I've been, followed it obviously very closely since I've betting it and have gotten sort of the bug and gotten really into it, is golf, unlike really any other sport, holds scar tissue. And you can
Yeah.
see it on the back 9 when Scotty's trying to hole like 10-foot putts, even when Justin Thomas, with what happened with Spieth and with Morikawa down the stretch of events, with Xander, these elite players who go 2 years, 3 years without winning. There's just so much built up scar tissue in moments where they don't come through that is very hard to overcome. And I think it's advantageous for Ludwig to really not have any of that. Like he hasn't underperformed. He hasn't hit the stretch of struggles. He doesn't know what it's like to go through a spell where he's ball striking the hell out of it and can't hole a 12-foot putt. And that frustration that sort of builds and that monkey on your back when you're the best ball striker in the field and you can't make anything. And he's just kind of out there freewheeling. And I think that that's definitely a positive. Do I worry about him as a first timer? Of course, it's a concern. It'd be the biggest event that he's ever played and ever won in his entire life. But I feel like this guy is as well suited as any young player to take on the task. We've seen in a while.
That's such an interesting point to bring up because there's so many. I agree with you, and there's so many. It's so hard for me to hear you say that and not think about Rory. And there's been so many like great Patrick Harrington quotes on this too. But actually, the first guy that I thought of when you started saying this, and we don't need to spend too much time on this guy because I don't think either of us are betting him. But do you think we're starting to reach that point with Scotty? Like, I don't know if people that aren't as into the data community as maybe people like you and I are realize what he is doing right now and how wild it is that he is not capitalizing on something this historic. We keep saying to ourselves, like, gosh, Scotty's going to win this week by 6 if he just putts well. He's going to win this one by 5 if he just putts well. And it's like, man, I wonder are we sure that's like going to happen? Like, it's almost feels more likely that this ball striking, it's a tough one. You could argue it in so many directions, but when you talk about scar tissue, my mind immediately went to what it's got to be like for Scotty to outplay Hoffman and Taylor from tee to green and still be the one watching them duel it out in the playoff.
Has to be so frustrating. He actually putted pretty well last week and still didn't get it done. And, every putt that he missed, he's looking over at Ted and he's like, this thing did something weird. I didn't think it was going to go right or whatever it is. But the pressure has to be mounting. I don't think this is a really tough take because he's obviously going to probably win multiple times this season, but 7.5 to 1 in any field is an unfair betting price on someone with this much scar tissue and this much of an ability to struggle in an area that is so important with outright winning. When you look at those numbers that have really, I think there's a handful of players that have even been priced below 7 to 1 that I can remember in all my years doing this. And they were in great putting runs. It was Rahm like last year when he won 4 times in 6 weeks. He was putting fantastic. It was peak Tiger. There was a moment when I think Dustin Johnson was priced around them when he was playing fantastic as well. But it's been a long time for Scotty and it continues to build, and you can't really win. Is he a great DraftKings option almost every week, no matter the price? Of course he is. Is he a great option in most matchups or top 10 markets? Yes. Is he a good bet at 6.5 or 7 to 1? Almost never.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. So for me to put a bow on the top of the range, JT's the only bet that I've made. I'm making a decision on my number 2 guy. It'll most likely either be Ludwig, maybe Cantlay or Xander. But JT's the only guy I have in the 20s. But we can talk about some guys farther down because there's one guy I love in the 40s too.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it down to 18 to 1. There were 22s there. I think I saw somebody had like a 25 or 26 on JT. The guy in the mid, I mean, Wyndham Clark's 45 to 1.
Yeah.
Like, you bet that. If you're here watching this show, you're betting golf, take Wyndham Clark 45 to 1. He is a great putter. He is in complete control with his irons. I saw him hit some shots where he's taking the spin off of it. He's putting the spin on it. He's eyeing down nearly every iron shot he hits. He's been great on the West Coast. He's been great in big time events. He reacts very favorably under immense pressure, which I think is a very underrated, unquantifiable thing. And obviously the links to Pebble and POA. George Thomas designed LACC. Is that correct?
He sure did. Yeah, he did design.
So he won there. He obviously won the U.S. Open at a Thomas design. Like, it's just a price where I feel like Will Zalatoris is the same price. Matt Fitz, like, take Wyndham Clark, and I think that is a great value bet, as I think the odds makers are slow to react on this guy. He's 3 times the price of Xander Schauffele. Like, he is just, I feel like, almost as likely to win this as Xander is this week. I really trust that number, and he's playing great golf.
Yeah, I'm so glad that people are coming around on Wyndham Clark because
I was slow. I was very slow to come around.
Entering the year, my numbers were continually suggesting that this was like a top 10 guy on this version of the PGA Tour, at least at some of the fields that some of the courses, and his fit at some of the courses that we were playing early in the season. He was like incredibly high up in my numbers and modeling at every event that we played this season. Like top 5 at Pebble, Century, Amex, and I bet him every week, and finally it came through for me at Pebble. I don't understand why he doesn't get the respect that he deserves in the betting market yet. I think he is unquestionably like at he's the 6th ranked player in the world right now, whatever that
Yes.
means. I don't really care about the OWGR anymore, but I think on this version of the PGA Tour, I think you're nuts if you put him outside the top 15 players of just like any week, no matter the golf course. He's one of the top 15 guys on this iteration of the PGA Tour. The guy that I love in this range is Matt Fitzpatrick. Now
Okay.
I love Fitzpatrick at golf courses like Riviera with a low greens and regulation percentage and a low driving accuracy percentage. Not to get like super into the weeds with some of the rabbit hole stuff that I'm looking at, but like the way that this guy raises his baseline on golf courses with like smaller greens, golf courses with low greens and regulation percentages, golf courses where there's a lot of rough, golf courses where you have to scramble from the rough. He's a really like underrated, powerful driver of the golf ball. He has a 5th place finish at Riviera in the past. I think if we got the conditions that we got on Thursday in Phoenix, Fitz would have contended. It looked like him and Lowry were going to be running away with this thing on Thursday morning when it looked like they were at Portrush. And he still finished top 15 from the wrong side of the draw. So, you know, I love Fitzpatrick at this golf course. I think 40-1 is a very fair number on like a US Open champion. Brookline, really small greens too, low greens and regulation percentage. Like this is just a Fitzpatrick course, in my opinion.
Seen a lot of people hop back in on Cam Young. Where are you at with him?
I'm not going to bet him this week, but I'm a big Cam Young fan long term. I think it's a good fit for him. I don't think he'll make the final cut for me. But I'm cautiously optimistic about Cam this week. I'm going to be with Lamagna at Riviera, so I'm sure I'll be following. I'll be following him a ton. Him and just to quickly ask you about Zalatoris too. Like those were kind of the two guys where I feel like people are really, really fast the second they show you something, particularly on golf courses that fit their game as well. And I was actually a little bit surprised that I didn't see more Zalatoris love this morning, considering he showed some serious stuff at Torrey, and this is a great golf course for him.
Yeah, I actually threw him. He was the last pick on my card at Torrey. I think it was 80-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I'm looking now. Like he's gained, over 2 strokes tee to green in his last 2 starts. It's not quite there yet for me enough to pull the trigger. I would still like to see a little bit more consistency with the irons. He's still bleeding a ton of strokes with the putter. He was awful at the Hero. He lost 4.5 at the Sony. He lost 2.5 at the Amex. I still have some major concerns there, but he's going to have to get back to ball striking it at a level where he's gaining between like 7 and 10 strokes on the field. I think if he's going to win an outright ticket.
That's fair. I don't, I the only bets I've made are JT and Fitz. I mean, are we wild for not giving more consideration to some of the guys deeper down based on what we've seen at the beginning of the year? Do we have to have like a quick Tiger conversation too? Like if I gave you over under finishing position for Tiger, let's say 35th or 35th in a 70-man field. Are you taking the over or the under?
I think he's going to finish worse than that, so I would take the over there. I'll root for it. There will be plenty of coverage. I hope the comeback is there. Was super, very encouraged by the swing and the movement that I saw at the Hero. He has not been good here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he is not. It's like Riviera is so interesting. It's the one golf course that Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, neither of them have won at Riviera, and they played it throughout their career. Interestingly enough, yeah.
But I think you got it to like you pick a couple long shots. If you're betting golf at this point in the season and you aren't taking guys over 100-1, like it's happened every single week. I'm going to do my long shots video tomorrow, but one of the ones I really like, I got him at 110-1. It looks like there's 100-1 still available. I took Kurt Kitayama.
Yeah.
Kurt Kitayama's been pretty good on the West Coast. I like difficult tasks for him. I don't love him in a birdie fest. I like him in these. He obviously won the signature event last year at Bay Hill. He was pretty good at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. I think the numbers sort of are trending a bit for Kurt Kitayama. I know that he did a lot of that with the putter, but he's one of the names in this range that I trust. Two things, like one of the biggest differences between the guys you're seeing right now on your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, and the guys, if I scroll up to this range right here, is power. Like, look at all these guys. These guys all hit it far. These guys at 100-1 generally are all short hitters. And not to say they can't compete here, but I'll take the one guy that sort of sticks out in Kitayama, who does hit it far, who can get streaky with his irons, and I think has put up some good recent performances. But yeah, I think absolutely there are some that make sense. Speaking of the shorter hitting guys, like when you get down to that 50 range and players like Poston and maybe Jason Day, or guys who are below tour average in terms of ball speed, I do think that they probably get very overlooked this week and could make some intriguing options in DFS.
Yeah. I think it's actually like a sneaky good bounce back spot for Poston, even though we probably don't think of this as a Poston golf course. I know that you love this guy, but I have like become the whisperer of this player in, the Run Pure Sports community, because for some reason my models just continue to love this guy way over expectation week after week. And that's Adam Svensson, who lipped out on 17 for eagle to miss the cut on the number, despite catching the wrong side of the draw.
Yeah.
I think Svensson's good. I don't think I have to sell you on that one. He finished 9th at Riviera last year as well. He doesn't really have the type of power that I've maybe looking for traditionally at Riviera. But he's a really good iron player. And he's had a lot of success on these greens, particularly in the past. Like, he showed up to Riviera and gained 5 strokes putting in his first appearance. That's not easy to do. That doesn't happen very often. So something about this golf course seemed to fit, particularly these greens, with Svensson's eyes. And I think that coming off a miscut on the number where he kind of got dealt a bad card with the draw, I think like a really sneaky DFS play at 6,600.
Yeah, and the thing with the Svensson that I noticed is normally he'll play his best on the shorter courses, like you said, but he's interesting. He's actually above tour average. I'm looking now in terms of ball speed and accuracy. He's not necessarily short, but when you think of him, a lot of the players that you would lump together with him, like say like a Tom Hoagie, who's here on the board, fantastic wedge players, and Adam's a pretty good wedge player, but his strength with his irons is really his long irons, like 175 to 225 yards. He is really, really good for not being a quote unquote bomber. He hits his long irons really well and plays those long par threes very well also. And he's just a streaky enough putter where you catch him at the right time, like I did at the RSM a few years ago, and he'll gain 9 strokes putting and win a tournament when he does so.
Yeah. So I think he's a great option, in the 6s in DFS. Cameron Davis as well. I typically like at golf courses like this, but that's all I got for me. Hopefully it's JT for us, buddy. I really think that this is such a perfect spot for him. I thought 22-1 was such a fair number. So hopefully he brings it home for us, my friend. I will be there cheering him on for us.
I love to hear that. Congrats on all you're doing. Yeah, it's one of those weird weeks where I felt like the last couple I've been like making a card for me hasn't, like, I've second guessed things and kind of talked myself in and out on guys. This week was very like straightforward for me, and I felt like I saw it pretty well. JT, Ludwig, Wyndham, felt like they were all fair prices and a good bit of win equity that they all hold as a 3 pair together there. Thank you, bud. I appreciate you coming on. As always, continue to crush it over as the lead golf person at Run Pure Sports. I know that that's going fantastic for you. Tell everyone where they can find some more of your stuff this week.
Yeah,
You're
thank you,
everywhere.
man. I'm in a lot of places now. You know, I told you before the show, like I was worried that people were over this professional golf shit. And I've been pumped to find out that, you know, people still want to hear about who to bet on the PGA Tour and who to play in DFS. So if you want more of my stuff, runpuresports.com, code Andy for 15% off. And my podcast is free every week as well. If you don't want to pay for the extra stuff at Run Pure Sports, you can just check out Inside Golf Podcast every Sunday mornings and Tuesday mornings every single week on Apple or Spotify, wherever you subscribe.
The best place to start, man. Sundays, you're always the first one up. You always have great information, so we appreciate it. Keep crushing it, buddy. Best of luck this week. Have fun at Riviera. We'll talk soon, pal.
Awesome. Later, buddy. Thank you.
See you, dude. All right, thanks for hanging with me, guys. I'm going to do a quick final thoughts segment. We will get you all out of here. Thank you again for checking out the show. Make sure to go follow Rotoballer PGA on Twitter. It's streaming live there as well. Give that Twitter feed a like. Give them a little follow. Give them a little love. Make sure you know that you're checking out this show via their support. I greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Excuse me. I wanted to do a quick little final thoughts talk this week on connectivity. So those of you who followed me will know that your boy made a hole-in-one this week. Pretty interesting situation. So I'll give you the backstory. Really, the story starts on the hole before, and this is kind of what I wanted to touch on. So I'm on the 10th hole. I'm playing pretty well. I make a horrible drive. My second shot, I've got to kind of chip out sideways. It's par 4, long par 4, dog leg right. My third shot is off way to the right of the green, way to the right of the green. I can't find it basically anywhere. We were in a situation where there was a tournament, so we were playing Stableford. So a double you pick up, you take a 0, you get your double and get out of there. We couldn't find the ball. I eventually found it. I'm hitting 4 on a par 4, and it's in the side of this bush, maybe a foot off the ground. I'm a right-hander, so I can't even get in there. Can't get in there. I literally almost picked the ball out of the tree and went to the next hole. It was kind of customary. Everyone was doing it when you're out of the hole. Let's keep the pace moving. Let's keep it going. I decided I'm going to try this. I walked back to the cart. I made a conscious decision to not give up on this hole. I went and grabbed a different club. I went in, and it was the first ever time I've attempted, my back's facing the hole, to hit a shot backwards behind me, right-handed, out of a bush. Made it to the fringe, somehow, miraculously made it to the fringe, and I've got like 45 feet left for bogey to try to score a point in this Stableford's format. Your boy holds it, bogey. The vibes are extremely high, and I think a lot of it was a sense of positivity that came from that moment in terms of not giving up on the hole that brought me to the 11th tee box. Freed me up, positive vibes only, and I made a hole-in-one. First one I've ever had, and I want to believe that those two moments were connected. And I know those of you who follow are thinking, here he goes again, trying to find spiritualism and symbolism in something randomly. But the reality is this world that we live in is all interconnected. We're all made up of positive and negative atoms, and everything that you see, touch, feel, taste in this world is made up of positive and negative. Embrace circumstances that may potentially be negatively charged and try to flip that script into something positive. And I think that here's the thing. I don't think if I would have given up on the hole 10 and taken the double that I would have made that hole-in-one. And you could tell me that I'm wrong, but I believe that those two moments were somehow connected, and everything that we do in life is interconnected. And the more elements that you can bring a sense of positive energy to may change what happens next to you. They may change what the next swing is, what your next day is, what your next year is, what the rest of your life could potentially be affected by something that you are able to flip from a negative scenario into a positive. Now, I understand this is impossible, excuse me, to deploy constantly this type of positive mindset and be effective. But you can consciously make a decision in a few moments in time to flip the energy into something that is more positively beneficial to your body, maybe to your family or to your mind, and believe that you will potentially see results. Thank you all for checking out the show. I appreciate your congratulations this week from so many of you. It was truly appreciated. Subscribe to the Preferred Lines podcast on YouTube. Make sure to check us out on the audio versions as well. A like and a retweet goes an extremely long way. You guys are awesome. My name is Joe Idoni. This has been another issue of the Preferred Lines podcast. Good luck at Riviera Country Club. I'm out of here. Peace.